From Russia with Love is now 60 years old, and if ever a film could be said to have stood the test of time, the second Bond film is it. An instant classic, its reputation as one of the very best Bond films, and indeed films of the 1960s, is assured forever. In part 4, we discuss the incredible performance of Sean Connery as James Bond 007, and also the magnificent score from John Barry.
I think it's obscene, actually, how cool he is in this film, and how much he sets a template for everything that possibly does or should go on from this point. This is the point where, this is kind of, obviously, like, as we've discussed, it's a downbeat movie for Bond. In terms of, like, it's smaller scale. Obviously, the ramifications of the plot are massive, but this all lives and dies on the fact that Sean Connery is the absolute don in this film. let's not play games here. He is next level incredible in this film, and I actually think, like, more than that, like, I think it's downplayed in wider cinema understanding how incredible Sean is in From Russia with Love. I really do think it is, because I think that it sets such a standard for Bond and the people that play James Bond. This is it, boys. This is what you got to live up to.
Obviously, the main fight with Grant is incredible, but the build-up to it, where Bond is vulnerable, isn't he? He's worried that this guy could beat him.
It's just incredible filmmaking, I think, actually. You know, it's just, like, more than anything else, I just think this is, like, top-tier filmmaking.
Everything about it, the way he moves, like the way he holds his gun in the, you know, it's sort of close to his chest, isn't it? And these sort of idiosyncrasies that you maybe not notice at first viewing, but he is creating a character here.
Yeah, and I think even before the film itself, the poster for the film, you know, there's one where, you know, like, is it like meet his incredible new women, or, you know, he's on an incredible new adventure, and it's got that classic kind of, it's that Hitchcock kind of style poster, where he's sideways like that. He's the since Dr. No, he's now a poster boy. He's now a unrecognizable face. He is James Bond, just on the posters before audiences had probably seen the film, which is such an achievement in one film. To have established that in Dr. No is remarkable. And then when you plant him in Istanbul in a grey suit, stalking kind of, you know, characters, following them, occasionally with sunglasses on, it's like, this is incredible. When he gets the Thunderball, I think there are times there where I think he looks possibly his best as well. But this isn't anything swimsuit. I don't think we see much of Sean's body in this film as much. But it's the suits, and if you think about that fight with Grant. In fact, I think Norman Wanstall might have mentioned it in the interview, that these men in suits fighting like this, it's not two army men in army suits with bulletproof vests and a machine gun fighting. These are two men who are incredible fighters, but wearing suits. I think just Sean Connery absolutely nailed it in terms of his appearance. And obviously, we can't just give credit to Sean Connery for that. That's, you know, it's the costume designer, it's Terence Young. It's everything coming together, knowing that we've got him, let's frame him, let's give him everything here. But also his acting, you know, it's when he's opposing Grant in those scenes, just by talking, Connery is magnificent. And he kind of, you get glimpses of that when he's having his meal with Dr. No, you know, he's unafraid to make comments about Spectre. He's unafraid to call these criminals what they are. But just in this film, the way he deals with Grant, like I mentioned earlier, the threat that he feels even from Kleb at the end, even though she's physically far inferior to him, I think it's the talent to portray that. And this relationship he has with Tatiana, you know, it's superb. And then we were just talking about Moneypenny and Q and M. He becomes part of that family. He's not a lone person, even though he's the central character. He is surrounded now by people who are with him for a long stretch. Kieran mentioned before about Felix being, one of the most recognizable allies, which he is, but M, Moneypenny, Q, and Bond now, they are completely consistent. Felix, they felt they could change the actor. They felt they could switch it around. I'm not sure, why and whether it worked really, but when it comes to this central group of characters and Connery at the center of it, you don't want to change a thing. You don't want to change a thing. You only want to build them up more and more. And after From Russia with Love, Connery is absolutely ready to roll and just so at ease in the part, and he knows exactly what to do.
He elevates every scene, doesn't he? So if he's having banter with Desmond Llewellyn, Sean Connery is raising the stakes with that, and he's creating that environment. When he's flirting with Moneypenny, I mean, who else can do it as good as that? When he's with Tatiana, it's just the back and forth is done brilliantly. With Grant, that relationship, it's not just the same tone throughout. He's got to be quite different with the different relationships.
I think this is him cementing the persona, the role, the performance, all that, and it is like this is like it basically saying that Dr. No wasn't a one-off, because we, like he came into Dr. No with like so much confidence, so much presence, so much charisma. It's unbelievable. So then to step it up for this film and add more to his performance, and then it's like this is the launch pad to then like Thunderball, Goldfinger, all those kind of like where he just seems much more relaxed in terms of he absolutely embodies that character now. But when you watch him in Dr. No, you're never in doubt that this is a character, this is an actor who absolutely owns this performance. There's no doubt in that. But for, like I say, for him to add more nuance, to add more vulnerability, to add just more to that performance is amazing. And I think I put that down to the writing, certainly, but also down to Terence Young's direction, that you are able to believe that Bond, when he's on his knees and Grant's got that gun pointed at him, he is shitting himself, essentially. He's thinking, how am I going to get out of this? You can see the cogs moving and thinking like, well, shall I annoy him more? Shall I get him angry? Will that be my way out? Actually, no. Maybe if I play it this way, and you can see he goes from one end to the other, and that is so well done. So yeah, I think his performance in this film is fantastic, and to see him, like just add. I think there is a, like I say, like with Tatiana's performance, there's ambiguity to everything. It's not just everything's on the surface. I feel that Bond has his own like inner, he has something going on in the background. He's not just this kind of not everything's playing out. I think it's a great performance, and it just cements him as not only as a great actor but as an absolute movie star. I think it's a brilliant performance.
Kieran, do you think it's his best performance as Bond?
Yeah, without shadow. For me, Dr. No, obviously, brand new formula, brand new concept. That for me, he was finding his feet almost. He was establishing himself and a franchise in one. Whereas this film, he takes what he earned in the first film and capitalizes. I just think he is the complete package. I've actually got it on now. I had to put the film on just so I could have
brilliant
background. And there's just, whereas Goldfinger firmly established him as Bond in the sense the complete deal, there's just something beautifully organic about his performance, I feel, in this film. And this is his best, in my opinion. I enjoy watching him in this film more than any other film. Dr. No as well, but those first two films are just beautiful to watch from his perspective. And again, the scene has just been on, when he's walking through the airport at Istanbul. He walks through that airport and he just owns everything in that scene. If I could even have an essence of the charisma and charm that he has and the flamboyancy with which he walks, I'd be a very happy man. I'm sure I don't even have a finger's worth, but no, but he's beautiful to watch in this film. And that may seem strange saying it about a male character, but just what he brings to this part, it is a joy to watch. The same way as for me in the later films with Roger. Again, just you can't take your eyes off him when he's on the screen, and that's the charisma that he brings and the talent, because that's the other thing. You forget how good an actor he was in a lot of his movies. And especially in the scenes at the beginning when it's not Connery, well, when it's not Bond, it's an imposter. The little mountains he adopts, which obviously are quite typically not Bond, but he's playing that part as someone pretending to be Bond. There's so many multifaceted layers, and it's actually testament to his acting ability. So this is my favorite, and it's the one I will always hark back to when I'm, praising his performance.
He owns the role. He carries the weight of the franchise and everything that's sort of coming with it, that's increasing with such effortlessness that it's a joy to behold, really. We've said this before, you can't underestimate the impact that he had on everything. If he wasn't cast right, then we don't have a franchise. We're not talking about it today. And yeah, after such a good performance in Dr. No, to follow it up with this just shows the quality of actor and movie star that he is. Yeah, it is different when he gets Diamonds Are Forever. It's a slightly different Connery portrayal of Bond, but by then things have changed and everything. I'm a bit more forgiving of that kind of thing. But in this, it was his favorite film that he was in. I don't know if it was therefore his favorite performance of Bond. What more can we say about the impact that Sean Connery has had, and his performance in this? As I say, it just really cements him as this incredible character, to make this an incredible character of cinema. To take something that was a literary character and to bring that to life in such an iconic way is almost an impossible feat, and he was able to do it.
Before I join you guys tonight, I'm so sorry that I was late, but I was on the beers with my dad and my brother, both big Bond fans. And my dad, I said to my dad, like, look, if I can get back in time, we're going to talk about From Russia with Love. And he went to see it in the cinema, in '63. And it was like, to him, he said, like, I don't think anyone these days knows how seismic it was to go and see these in the cinema at the time. It was just so transformative. Like, so for Tom, for us, it would be like we're 12 going to watch GoldenEye at the cinema, give or take 12, 13. But you'd already had, like, bold action movie heroes and bold adventure heroes by that point. I'm thinking of, like, John McClane and Indiana Jones and people like that, that kind of stuff. In '63, like, this was just absolutely unheard of, that someone could be this bold and in control and cool and suave and wow. He said it was seismic, the impact of this movie on people of his age, which is exactly the precise age that I really, I'd watched Bond for a long time, but like, I remember at like 11, 12, like suddenly just like the love creeping in and gripping me really hard. Can you imagine a Bond of this caliber being in the cinema at that time? Like when we were 11, 12, like, wow. So yeah, just absolutely gigantic. The impact this had culturally at the time.
Hear loads of our other episodes on iTunes, Spotify, and our YouTube channel, where we have interviews, special episodes, and reviews of all the Bond films. Simply search Really 007 Pod, and you should find loads of weird and wonderful content.
Hi, it's John from Really 007, and I'm here to talk about From Russia with Love. From Russia with Love. Happy 60th anniversary. And I've just got to say before I start, this is an unbelievable film. This is one of the very best films in the series. I'd say Objectively speaking, it's one of the 3 best made Bond films. It's my favourite Sean Connery film. It's a film that I've loved ever since I've grown up. I've heard some people say that they've appreciated it as they've got older because maybe it was a bit slow or boring. That's never been my experience. It's very clever. It's not just a great Bond film, it's a great film in British cinema. It's incredibly Hitchcockian. You can tell Terence Young's influences. It's very reminiscent of North by Northwest, but it just so happens that I love Alfred Hitchcock, I adore North by Northwest, and I adore From Russia with Love. And it's just a top film. So I'm just going to go through things of why I think it's a top film. And the first reason I'm going to say is Mr. Sean Connery. Sean Connery's best performance for me, the most spy-like. It's like he had that spy aspect in Dr. No, and he does a phenomenal job. This is like he's got that springboard, that confidence in him. He walks around like a panther throughout this film. The whole espionage stuff in Turkey, how he just makes stuff which is very, very run-of-the-mill in terms of just checking the walls for bugs and those kind of things. Spy work, basic spy work. He makes it so tense, and he just oozes charisma, oozes class here. Another reason why I love this is I think this is a true Spectre film. If you had to say who is the main villain in From Russia with Love, I think that's a really difficult question. I think that's probably the most. I think this is the film where it's most difficult to pin who the main villain of the film is out of all the Bond films. I'd probably go with Rosa Klebb, and I think she is frightening. I mean, she's perfectly cast, and when you look at like Lottie Lenya and her background and stuff, she's so far removed from that kind of Rosa Klebb character, but she is absolutely frightening in the role. And ultimately, she's the one who her death scene is the final scene in the film. It's like in terms of how her death it comes across a bit erotic at times, let's say. But then the overall mastermind of the film is Ernst Stavro Blofeld, and I think it's the best Blofeld portrayal in the whole of the series. I think the idea of just showing the cat and hearing them speak is far more creepy than any time we actually see Blofeld's face, and far more creepy than any kind of confrontation between Bond and Blofeld. For someone who hadn't read the books when I was watching this film, I didn't have a clue who he was until watching the later ones, and it really struck me with fear. Fantastic portrayal by Anthony Dawson and Eric Pullman. But to me, the big bad, the masterstroke of the film is Donald Red Grant by my man Robert Shaw. He is if you want to call him a henchman, he's the best henchman in the series. If that's what he is, he's the best henchman in the series. He's definitely working under orders, but he's like an assassin trained for hire, isn't he? He's that first kind of dark side of Bond we get. Some of the shots we see when he's mirroring, following Bond on the Orient Express in the dark, absolutely fantastic. The scenes where he actually is portraying Nash and he's eating with Bond, there's such an eerie feel to it, such an uneasy feel, that is just brilliant. You know that it's going to just culminate in an epic battle, and it really does. And the train fight is still to this day the best fight in the Bond series for me. The claustrophobia of it, how Bond uses his wits initially to actually set the fight off and not die. The sound design and the dubbing by Norman Wanstall and his team, sensational. I mean, you feel every single shot that has happened, and then you've got a quality punchline by Connery once he has hoisted Red Grant with his own petard. I love the film. I think Tatiana is an underrated Bond girl. And it's a weird thing to say, but whenever you hear these things about who are the best Bond girls, she's never really mentioned, and yet she's stunning. She mirrors Bond in that she has no idea what's going on. She's just been brought in to given a snippet of what's happening, but has no idea that she's a pawn in this far bigger operation. Just like Bond is, he does not know that this is a Spectre plot. And I love the journey that she goes through, and I think you can definitely tell that place of where she starts with Mother Russia, and yet she finishes genuinely loving James. And I think that the perfect example of this is that it's her that kills Cleb at the end, and that's such an interesting character arc. You never see her realise that Cleb works for Spectre. Now, it may be that Bond told her. As far as we know, Cleb still works for Smersh. That's what she thinks anyway, and yet she chooses to kill her as opposed to Bond, showing that her allegiance to Bond is greater than her allegiance to a country. And I love that touch. Kerim Bey is one of the most charismatic allies in the whole series. Very much kind of sets the standard for those charismatic allies with mustaches, like Columbo in For Your Eyes Only. And maybe he doesn't have a mustache, but Tanaka in You Only Live Twice. Those absolutely top drawer Bond allies. Love them all. I love the scenery of Istanbul. I mean, I don't think you can underestimate that this is a kind of Judith Chalmers' Wish You Were Here moment when you're seeing the scenes of Istanbul and the Bosphorus and the Hagia Sophia. In the 60s, these wouldn't have been seen on telly, and it really is like a travel show for that, and it's absolutely beautiful. The film is elevated by John Barry's score. It's not one of my favourite Barry scores, but even so, it still elevates the film from the previous one. It has that Bondian feel, but it does have some great motifs. Like I love the Spectre motif, and it brings us the 007 theme tune. And I think sometimes I forget that was written initially with this film, and I just see it as an overriding thing, but it's first and foremost part of this score, and for that, it deserves to be given mass credit. There's so much more I could talk about in this film. I'd just be rambling about how great it is. It's one of those films that me and my wife both love. And my wife doesn't really like that many Bond films, but I think it's just a clever film, really well made, and 60 years, what an achievement. And yet to this day, people can say technically it's a perfect film, and that is testament to how great it is. So happy anniversary from Russia with Love, and we'll see you at 70 years.
Yeah, so we move on to the music. And of course, the first film was Monty Norman, but without John Barry, even Dr. No, the music, the production that he did on the theme and everything wouldn't have been as good. I do think some of the Monty Norman stuff's underrated. I mean, like Under the Mango Tree, it's his own composition, to be fair. So there's more than just the Bond theme and the odd bit of island music. Anyway, but to have John Barry, I mean, it's what an audition to arrange the Bond theme. To be fair, even still, he's not writing the theme song. You know, it's a Lionel Bart theme song, but it's the arrangement of that, the instrumental in the title sequence. How many amazing pieces of music are in here? And while it might not be as iconic and memorable as Goldfinger would be, and then Thunderball, we really do get the correct kind of music for this. We get Istanbul music, don't we, when he's there in the gypsy camp. And then on the train, this every style that he's got in his canon is just so talented. And I'll start with Chris, because I know John Barry, I mean, he must be, we mentioned Sean Connery, we mentioned Terence Young, but we're getting to the stage where can you even think about how Bond, the first 10, say, what on earth would have happened without John Barry on any of them? I don't know.
Yeah. I think this is the like I was saying, that when you hear even the sort of opening scene, the score for as Red Grant is stalking Bond, it's so gripping. you know, and then to cut to the theme music. I think you know, and I've probably said this like half a dozen times on this podcast, but has there ever been a better, you know, kind of combination of composer and source material, you know, like in terms of he totally understands Bond, and I feel like that the filmmakers almost, you know, went the other way, where it's like, well, I reckon, you know, I reckon Barry can lift this up, you know, like we'll leave it to John Barry to sort this scene out.
Yeah.
He'll make it dramatic, you know. And one scene in particular, no disrespect to John Glenn, is in A View to a Kill with the fire scene with, you know, coming down that is, you know, dramatically not you know, an amazing scene, but John Barry's score elevates it to like almost like I'm gonna cry thinking about it. Like it is just an amazing piece of music for that scene. And I think, like I said, I cannot underestimate just the impact that Barry had, not only on you know, just the series. And like I say, it just goes both ways. And I genuinely love when he isn't there. I do love the scores that are, and the composers that come in, you know, and try and do something different. I think obviously, you know, Live and Let Die is for me is very high up, you know, on that. But yeah, John Barry, you know, I don't throw that word around lightly, but an absolute genius, you know, not only in Bond, but just within, you know, the music that he composed for TV and other films, but just the music he composed in general, you know, the music he actually released is just another level of just beauty and lushness and just stuff that you expect from him. I think he is a composer, you know, bar none. His, you know, to hear him go from like early jazz to then just that lush strings later on in his career is just, I can't say more. I think his, yeah, I say his impact on the series is amazing, and I just, it is not a. It's hard to say. It's like, I want to say it's not a Bond film unless it's got a John Barry score, but because that's not true. Because obviously we had Doctor No, and we've had other films that obviously that I love that don't have his score. But every composer post, you know, From Russia with Love is going, what would John Barry do here, and how can I either do something completely different, or can I interpret what he would have done in that time period? And that for me is just like, yeah, amazing.
And it's just so listenable. Everything is so gorgeous to listen to on its own. Then when you put it in the film, it's even better.
And it's interesting how he does have a style. So if you were to hear music, you weren't sure whether, you know, a piece you've not heard before, you'd be able to tell it's John Barry, but it would be different. He is just absolutely a huge part of the franchise's success. And just like everything else, he evolves. He stays within the formula, but he tinkers with it. He adapts his scores to suit the location. You mentioned Moonraker being lush, but goodness me, Man with the Golden Gun, get some really lush bits in that. But for this, From Russia with Love, you know, it's like bongos, and it's not so much strings. It's pretty different to what he ends up. You know, the journey of Barry and Bond, where he ends up and where he starts, is pretty sparse. You know, it's very different to one another, but it's still adding texture to the Bond character, and really more so than Dr. No. He is, even though there are good things in Dr. No, and even though I don't think this is John Barry's most complete Bond score, John Barry definitely adds. He definitely kicks off something here, where obviously it's the Bond theme and bongos and things like that, but also tension, like Kieran's mentioned in that opening scene, and credit to like the sound people, maybe Norman Wanstall as well, when not to use music, like on the train fight. But we even get the 007 theme, don't we?
Yes,
and
first time.
And yeah, in the Gypsy, you know, that big battle. And I've shared my views on the 007 theme. And it's it's an interesting one. I'm up and down with it. I do think this is pretty good use because I said before that I always think the 007 theme is quite Western, like John Barry's Western music that he does, and it suits this gypsy shootout. It's like a Western shootout at a fort or a fortress or something like that. Yeah. It does feel like that. It's not his most complete Bond score, but it's a significant step. And again, I'm a bit like with Moneypenny, with Lois Maxwell, Bernally, with all these people. I'm so glad that they stuck with them. I'm so glad that they kept them and they gave them the chance to reappear, to recur and develop. And it's crucial because it builds something incredible, and the confidence that they build together is magnificent.
Kieran, we had the pleasure, didn't we, recently of going to the Cue the Music comeback concert in London, and they did a suite of From Russia with Love, and it was, you very rarely get to hear that live for a start, and in the 60th anniversary, it's just spellbinding, wasn't it, that music?
It was incredibly special. As a lover of film music all my life, I've always enjoyed Barry's contribution. If it wasn't for Barry, these films would not be as successful. I'm going to make that statement as boldly as I can. They bring spice, they bring flavor, they bring color. When you think of Bond music, it's just so vibrant and beautiful. How do I put this? Barry certainly tickles my Tchaikovsky. That's for. The thing about film composers, with classical composers, whether it be 17th, 18th century, going right through to the modern composers of today, the sign of a great composer is to produce something entirely different but still maintain that sound, and that's exactly what Barry did throughout his tenure. Every time you hear Barry, that's John Barry. But every single one of his themes for this film franchise is totally different. And that is his skill and craftsmanship. If it wasn't for Barry, then, I don't think the films would have been as successful as they were. And it's interesting also because I was having this conversation with Bob at Cue the Music as well. It would have been so interesting to hear what Barry would have brought to Bond if he'd have composed GoldenEye or Tomorrow Never Dies. Oh. In a 90s setting. Can you, not trying to do disservice to David Arnold, but can you imagine GoldenEye with that wonderful orchestra, just that Barry orchestra and that Barry sound? It would have been sublime. But that's a what if conversation for another day. But for me, Barry's one of the highlights of this film and the franchise in general, and I adore his music. It is simply sublime.
I'm sure you agree, Rob, with this.
Do I agree? I mean, goodness me. I think Barry's sound, and I would admit also to being sort of slow on the uptake at times in the past about, when I was sort of developing my love of Bond, I just assumed it was all Barry. That's how significant his stamp on James Bond and the fabric of James Bond is. Fabric is a word that we keep using it all the time. Actually, it's actually a word I keep using it as well, because I think it's so important. I think it's because this is not just one movie. It's not just two movies. It's not just one soundtrack. It's not just one, example of cinematography. The fabric of Bond is this one massive tapestry of this franchise, and John Barry's imprint on this is one of the key imprints. These are the fingerprints of James Bond. Are right there. And John Barry, there is no. Honestly, I think he's one of the forefathers of what we think of James Bond now. Is John Barry.
And while we're on it, the song, Rob.
Greatness. Also love Ray Quinn's version.
Oh yes. Did we do that on an episode on the song?
Yeah, we did. Yeah. I mean, if you could clatter out a very good version of From Russia with Love in a pub in Liverpool, you have my approval. So yeah, awesome. No, I mean, it's a great. It's a classic song. It's so smooth. It's brilliant. Smooth. I think, like if you were to be tasked, like Mallet's Mallet. and you were given like word association games, like so. Spy Who Loved Me, and you had to come up with one word. For From Russia with Love, it would be smooth. Yeah, but then I'd be want to be smooth and formative. And then I would try and push the envelope. No, this is all of this, and I think like all of these building blocks at this point in the franchise's history are so vital, and lend itself and provide sustenance and foundation for everything that is to come. Seriously, Bond doesn't feel the same. Bond in the 80s doesn't feel the same if it weren't for the song that, weren't From Russia with Love. It just doesn't. None of it. And I don't mean the song, I just mean the entire package. Everything is part of the great big cohesive whole.
This is our first title song, which is interesting. And obviously a big thing, a big part of the films going forward that, whenever there's a new Bond film released now, well, who's doing the song for it, and who, so this was the first one of those. I think it's a good tune. It's beautifully performed. Not one of my absolute personal favorites, and I think I would say that I prefer it in the opening titles when it's an instrumental and John Barry's had his hands on it. Once you get to Goldfinger, I think it steps up a bit, and you have the composer of the films, and that composer being John Barry, writing the theme, which is a massive step, and so that you can incorporate those themes. Even though we do get some of the themes in we get instrumental of From Russia with Love in the film, but I don't think it hits as hard as once he's in control of that as well. But yeah, the music in the film is absolutely gorgeous. It's quite tense at times. It certainly adds to the tension, builds that up, we mentioned the Spectre theme, which is good and scary. The ability for him to do 11 scores, is that right? And for them to sound different and have different melodies in each one is amazing. And that does it does change, but it changes from Russia with Love to Goldfinger. It changes from Goldfinger to Thunderball. And for him to be able to provide this beautiful accompanying sound to these films is absolutely, it's wonderful for us, and it's wonderful for us to listen to the soundtracks, to cue the music, to be able to keep these scores alive in an arena, in front of a live audience, which is wonderful, and it's so good that they do that. And they add so much to the films and to the whole franchise that, I feel like I've said this about every aspect that you've asked me about, but it cannot be understated.
The song From Russia with Love, Chris, is it one of the more Chris ones or less? Or
no, I love it. I think it's a great theme. It's classic era, like early Connery. It's just it doesn't have the, like say, the get up and go that like Goldfinger has. It's like the beginning of that lush sort of, like say, the Matt Monro kind of crooner vibe to it. I think works well, and obviously you want to hear that version at the end. At the beginning you have that the instrumental version. So, but no, I really love it, and I like some of the cover versions as well. I think there's some interesting ones. Don't know about. I've not quite listened to Republicans yet, but I think
yes,
the one that's on the David Arnold one I always quite like.
Natasha Atlas.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Join us for the 5th and final part of our 60th anniversary of From Russia with Love.